Thank you for the invitation to be here today, and thanks to the team who put together this marvelous organized event. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to be with you here today in this venerable halls. Once more, as a member of the TV team within Swisscom who was entrusted to build this platform several years ago, I have the pleasure of asking today the question, to be or not to be on Android TV. As such, I will provide you with an insight on our decision-making process in the recent year, especially in the situation we were back then when we had to take this decision, and to my knowledge, when I drafted those slides 2 weeks ago, in the situation where we are today. Not in taking the input of today, of course, but see where we get with that. Some of those slides will be heavily in text, so I'm ashamed for that, but they're intended for the purpose for you to take home to your teams and talk to your strategists. Last but not least, we will have a short view what would have to change from our side of Swisscom regarding Android TV for us to reconsider our decision. And no, even for some, as this such might have the impression, I have no hidden agenda and try to be as objective as possible. Where we're coming from, Swisscom launched its IPTV venture in 2006 with 0 customers, DSL, based on a media platform. I think the latest point was 2.0, delivered by Microsoft. And we were happy, we had substantial growth, but after a certain time we realized there's a backdraft being bound so much to just one solution and platform provider. And we got the feeling that this very tight relation will limit us in future generations of the TV platform and even in our competitiveness in our local market. As such, we started looking around in 2012, what would be alternative solutions to come up with, which platform can we work on. Given at that time Android TV was around in its very early stages, at the brief look we had at it, we came to the conclusion either the scalability, the strict tools in place at that time, and the platform stability we were aiming for are not supported by the platform. Another reason, for example, is even so the energy restrictions which apply to Switzerland. Android TV at that time hadn't the capabilities to support those issues we were facing. Nevertheless, we went the way for Android open source project, and Android was the success of our TV journey in general. At Swisscom, we are highly customer experience focused and practice driven. Data-driven development is at our core. As such, the liberty of being ahead in the platform in data collection, learning, adapting, doing A/B testing is very essential for us. To provide you with a better picture of what the platform more or less looks like today based on Android open source project, I brought with a product demo video which we showed to the customers after a nightly update in 2007, where everybody was greeted with a welcome video about the new experience. Enjoy.
With Entertainment OS 3, your TV experience is even better and, most importantly, even more personal than ever before. You can tailor-make Swisscom TV to be exactly how you want it. With Personal Universe, you can find your favorite TV content even more easily. Your home screen is your own personal program guide. Under Now on TV, you'll see what's currently on your favorite channels, and with the help of our TV experts, you can discover which programs are recommended today and set to be the talk of the office tomorrow. You can easily store your favorites in the different theme worlds or immerse yourself in them straight away. You'll find the most popular series, most viewed, upcoming shows, video-on-demand highlights, and much more, listed by genre, all in the same place. You'll no longer be wondering where to watch, but what. Via Swisscom MyCloud, you can access your home videos and photos directly and enjoy them on the big screen. We are very proud of our voice-activated smart remote. Say what you want and Swisscom TV will do it. I want to watch SRF too. Or jump straight to a specific part of the menu. Show my recordings. New voice commands are being added all the time. You can now find things even more easily thanks to easy search. And the new actor biographies tell you all you need to know about your favorite stars, and you can see all available films straight away. Box set fans are also in luck. Thanks to the series overview, you'll never miss an episode of your favorite series again, whatever channel it's on. Your recordings are immediately available on all your devices. Thanks to unlimited recording, download your favorite programs at home and enjoy them on the go, even if you don't have an internet connection. By the way, the number of videos in UHD quality is increasing all the time. If you can't find anything to watch from over 50,000 programs available on demand and 6,000 Teleclub videos, you can use one of the apps. With Netflix, Sky, YouTube, Red Bull TV, and more, all available directly on your TV. There's even more content at your fingertips. You've got to try it. Thank you for choosing the best that digital TV has to offer. Welcome to Swisscom TV.
La la la.
As such, we reached, after 6 years, the product stability in the field, which reduces significantly the amount of calls we receive in complaining regarding the product or its stability. We reached, even through HR practices, as Colin told before, the capability of release a stable production client within 6 weeks, which would match its predecessor stability KPIs in the field. That gives us a leverage in bringing new features to the market in a very short time and being competitive. Almost on every feature, we reach a very high engagement level by the customers and manage to drive customers into new areas of the client. So we're constantly measuring the NPS, and as far as we are happy with it. For that, the UI ownership for us was very essential, and I consider ourselves UI crazy, because we want to have, for all audiences of our customerships, and those start with 20s and the late 80s. That's also a reason why we still have the buttons with the numbers on the remote control. A product which serves all their need. Being on Android open source project opened new sources of revenue for us. Being ahead of the choice whom we integrate in which partnership, under which terms, gives us the leverage of introducing carrier billing partnerships, and those are just picking up with every new SWOT service or different content provider being ramped up on the platform. Nevertheless, said, ramping up those apps and partners, it's effort and work involved. So what we're coming from, more technical slide. The Android guys will recognize this. It's the base Android framework. To the upper left, the parts which Swisscom mostly implemented. And since you're also a fan of open source, we made them available to a major stake now for you to have a look at and download and play with it. Why did we have to implement a full IP stack? One basic example is that we're heavily setting on multicast distribution with FCC Red and ALU, something which you wouldn't automatically get in that level and feature richness directly with Android TV. You would also have to invest there. And of course, the legislational forces which we have to comply with, energy consumption, all those integration levels we have to dig down are essential in the architecture. On Android, you have a very straightforward architecture to deal with. And I think we're happy with our partnerships we're engaging, because we're not doing contracts at Swisscom, we're doing partnerships. As such, our partners are very bound to us in the agile working manner too. And we managed to work in this architecture quite well. What do we have to consider between the choice of Android open source or Android TV? And at this, I'm mostly referring to Android operated here as the latest flavor to be available to us. This should be a framework of the points we are looking at. If you're going for Android TV, it's convenience. You're getting a lot of features already packaged by Google for you, and you profit from future developments. Vice versa, on Android open source, you have way more flexibility, which direction you go, but it's also more effort involved. Effort, which we spend, for example, in the voice recognition. We are serving 35 local dialects in Switzerland, something we wouldn't have achieved with the Google Voice Search, and is still a differentiator which our competitors try to catch up with. On the content side, Android open source, due to the lack of the presence of the Android Play Store, we are kind of gatekeeper, whom we go to enjoy business with and whom we're granting access to our customer base. But also, we have the extra effort to go that way to integrate those partners. In the layer of having the Android store on board, there's also factors you need to be aware of in the sense, yes, there are 4,000 apps, but there are also coming partners to your platform in the sense that they are not going to play fair on your local market due to lack, for example, of implementation of geofencing, or just their pricing techniques going way below the established prices in the market. So if you go that way, be prepared to deal with it. Efforts and cost. AOSP, definitely higher investment cost at the beginning, but we find that the life cycle we're saving. Coming back to that point later when we talk about Android TV and the upgrade policy. Further on, the user experience. For us, it was essential to have a one-hand drafted user experience. So whenever elements come up, we want them to be part of our UI. And we want to be able to deliver a very sleek, unified user experience. As such, with the control of the launcher, you have way more possibilities today than we had when we made the decision in 2012, 2013. But there are still overlays like the search and, of course, the assistant, where you have to deal with the Android UI coming on top. Of course, the security. On ASOP, we won't have the requirement to open the set-top box. On Android TV, that's still a requirement. And as previously mentioned, the stability and quality. We're designing for the platform just for our own hardware. Android TV is dealing with a zoo, and my deepest respect for that. So, at our approach, for the nearest future, I think Swisscom is going to rely on Android open source, but we're always open for discussion. Now we had the very deep emotional curve to light it a little bit up. Android is cool, because you find all over the world resources to work on Android, except for Switzerland. We tried heavily in latest month to get some local resources. We just get applications from outside of Switzerland. We consider Android future-proof. The community is growing and growing. The adoption on devices is growing further. That's a future-proof platform. And the focus on Android is the right one compared to other platforms available on the market, namely RDRK. We consider Android nowadays performant and stable. With a good partner, I think, and Swisscom thinks, the dependencies are manageable. We had good experience in touching the middleware layers and even going the way with third-party partners on that. Coming back to Android TV. For Android TV, we touched the Play Store aspects. Future features, I think that the assistant is going to be playing a major role, and that's also the back thinking of Google, what we see so far. The launcher is a good choice, introduced with Android Open tier, and Google is listening to us operators, made major moves coming into our direction. Search results, we heard, we're now in charge. We can have a talk who is going to present in the search results. So that's a very good direction we're already going. Nevertheless, for us to reach the stability and the performance we have today, the leverage of being able of introducing new technical counters very fast was very important and dear to us. Premium partnerships, you have the access to 4,000 apps, but the premium applications still come with a certification process, namely Netflix and Amazon. So the effort is still there, as we also heard yesterday. As soon as a customer wants to engage in Google Core Services, he needs to sign up or log in. Until that point, the customer hasn't been visible to Google. For some players in the market, that might present a problem, but it's part of the system. Voice search, yes, it's there. It wouldn't have served us for the Switzerland partners, and having Android boxes already in Switzerland being rolled out, there's no differentiation on that feature. Privacy. For Swisscom, it's a selling argument. We are hardly counting on having all the data we're collecting to stabilize and improve the project in Switzerland. Security we already touched. As such, it's just a repetition. Last but not least, what needs to change and switch for us? Those points are purely Swisscom view. We're doing an excellent business on the Vewd and SWOT. As such, we would like to have a little bit more talks in who's actually joining our platform, under which terms. Flexibility in regards to the voice assistant. The voice assistant is the next big thing. Having the possibility to bring our own side-by-side would be a wish of ours. The requirement to have the voice assistant on the remote control, we're already talking about, okay, there's Netflix on the remote control, there's Amazon, there's 4Play, there's the Google Assistant, there might be Alexa. No, there might not be Alexa, definitely not. It's going to be a zoo, and I don't want to exchange hardware buttons, nor do I want to make them as a display to be able to upgrade the partners by firmware flash. As such, talking earlier about the upgrade cycles. The upgrade cycles are a challenge for operators. We launched the product, and we don't want to spend 50% of our development resources just to keep in-field maintained. We're asking ourselves, why shouldn't there be the possibility to skip certain versions in the upgrade cycle to reduce the effort on the operator side? What you get as silicon support is mostly 3 years of support. For us as operators, we start to count set-top boxes in field 5 years and up. With a 3-year support life cycle, we would have to change our field force every 4 to 5 years. That's costs we cannot bear. Going the virtualized way, we heard earlier about set-top boxes in field. Do we longer need set-top boxes? That's a way to approach the problem. But we're still bound to the set-top boxes, at least on Swisscom side, because we want to give the customers the experience today. Virtualize that, or being on different TV sets, the experience and the performance will go down. As such, thank you very much for your attention. It was my pleasure.
So we have two new additions to the speakers you've already heard from. You have already heard from Darren and from Sascha. We have joining us Colin from BT.
Hello.
And Ismail from Ovum.
Ovum. Yeah, that's right.
So welcome to both of you. Now, Mark Twain famously said that reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated, and maybe reports of the death of the set-top box have been greatly exaggerated. Certainly, you're still sitting here, so there must still be some kind of business to be had from set-top boxes. So is it exaggerated, Darren? Where are we on the declining story of the set-top box?
I think to the point, yes, it is largely exaggerated. The reality is there are challenges in the video industry, and that's what, by and large, we've been hearing and discussing over the last couple of days. The fact of the matter is, there are still some very successful aggregators of content who still continue to innovate in the set-top box area. Locally, Sky, BT, Virgin, etc., are all growing their set-top box population. And what you're actually seeing is they're adding to that portfolio and that market. You've got Sky with the soundbar, you've got Sky Now, which is an OTT proposition, and again, you can buy that set-top almost at the end of your shopping aisle. I'm do the weekly shopping, I'll take the Sky Now box. You've just seen from Google as well, they are investing in a off-the-shelf, if you like, Android TV hardware. So, the fact of the matter is, to receive premium pay TV, subscription VOD, consumers still trust and go to operators for such a service. And while they do that, they will still take by and large, subscribe to a set-top box subscription. In addition, they may get content from other sources, but the premium viewing of premium content is still within the home, and that's still on a big screen, and that is still done by and large through a set-top box.
Ishmael, do the numbers prove that?
Absolutely. So according to Ovum research, the shipment per annum for set-top boxes, just set-top boxes, not streamers, is presently at 250 million, and this will rise to 280 million. And obviously, streamers aside, the growth in hardware will be even larger. But one thing we tend to forget from a global perspective is that many markets are far from maturity. So you have markets where there's still a movement of conversion from analog to digital, and these are huge markets. So large swathes in sub-Saharan Africa, and also there's a digitization movement in India and various Southeast Asian markets. So these are markets which are not to be neglected. Those markets they still have a large analog component. They're still moving to digital. So whereas the innovation obviously is taking place in mature markets in Western Europe and North America, et cetera, these are markets from a vendor's perspective that are not to be neglected as well.
Colin, you're in a pretty mature market. Going to need the box for long?
Well, I think more generally, there's a increasing need for hardware in the homes. The set-top box absolutely has a role to play for the main TV set. We've seen a lot of demographic change. We heard about some of that earlier on today. So the ability to move seamlessly between the big screen and the small screen, you need to be able to support both of them. To be able to do that, you need a really good Wi-Fi signal around the home, and that's the core of this. So we're seeing a lot of whole home Wi-Fi networks being built that underpin the delivery of those media services around the home, and that means more hardware in place. So set-top box absolutely has got a role. I think we heard a little bit about maybe things becoming smaller and dongle shape. That's definitely a possibility for that. We still deliver content, a hybrid service, so DTT and pure IP play, and so the DTT delivery requires some specific hardware. So until unless we're allowed to carry that entirely over IP, definitely a case for that in our network.
I mean, Darren mentioned, picking up your box at the supermarket, in the case of Now. I had a personal surprise when I bought off Amazon what I thought was a UView box that was going to give me access to everything on UView, found that I couldn't get BT subscription on that box. I had to get BT to send me an absolutely identical box. same branding, but sent by them. So retail device, really. I mean, isn't this a bit of a confusing story to consumers?
Well, so I'm not here to represent UView per se, and we can have a discussion about your personal experience offline if you'd like. Certainly the UView proposition is any UView device should work on any broadband lines, and that should include full provision of BT services. How that gets sold and supported is maybe a different discussion from the technical staff itself. So UView has been very successful for ourselves and TalkTalk. I think probably it's not evolved in the way that we thought at the outcome at the beginning, but the numbers are really good. It's a very successful platform for us and for TalkTalk, and UView continues to underpin that.
Sascha, what's your sense about operator-controlled devices or operator-subsidized devices in terms of a mix between that and other devices going forward?
I do think, like you said in the intro, I don't think this is a dead category. Far from it. I do think, though, some things are going to change. I think you mentioned, for example, retail experience, right? I do think that generally retailers are having an increased appetite to participate in that game. Not only on the set-top box side. I think that's also true for the smart TV side, because there's a lot of data involved, there's customer tracking involved, there's customer behavior involved. So I think what we will see in the next few years is also at least the bigger retailers trying to somehow become involved in that experience. The other thing is, I do think the cost structure is changing for operators, which has an effect on the type of devices they're offering, or the mix of devices. I don't think like the flagship 4K or maybe 8K UHD, HDR, whatever it will be in the future, with 2 terabytes of whatever storage, and you can record whatever you want, will go away. I do think, though, the mix of devices will change that an operator is offering, and that they are controlling to a certain degree, will change with the mix of services they are increasingly forced to offer. So an entry-level device where you are trying to retain maybe a younger generation or just retain customers, obviously that type of ARPU structure will lead to a different type of device than for your customers that are paying 100 quid a month or so for the service. So I think there will be a multi-device strategy as there is an increasingly diversification in operator services, which will lead to the interesting question on how will those fleet of devices actually managed. You can't afford, or most operators at least can't afford, to invest into 3-4 platforms on their own in-house, which means there's either an increasing market for technology partners to help with that, or it's relying on ready-made turnkey options, maybe for the entry-level segment.
You talked about increasing role of the retailer in part one of your answer. What do you mean by that?
I do think, like, for example, why, and again, this is not necessarily limited to the set-top box, but in markets where retailers are still a major source of distributing CE equipment, so like selling smart TVs, selling set-top boxes, why wouldn't they be interested in actually having a say in the experience? I mean, it's not a surprise that Amazon is actually with Fire TV or Fire OS actually building an experience, and that's not just to transport video, right? Their expansion from their little box to smart TVs, for example. There's more with Best Buy in the US selling Fire TV TVs, right? There will be, like, what you can read, there will be a Best Buy advertising on those kind of things. So wouldn't be too surprising if someone like Best Buy or Dixon's would be interested in having loyalty numbers tracked back to TV usage, right? Like off-store tracking of what the consumer is doing or to what they are reacting has always been a big investment they had. And I do think they will increasingly get into this and participate in this.
It was interesting, of course, that part of the Apple announcement was that the Apple TV Plus service will be available on Fire TV, which is a significant move between those two big players.
Yeah.
Can I say, just that super aggregator, we've heard a little bit earlier in the conference this morning about the FANGs and so on. This proliferation of content from different content providers, I think, is increasingly confusing for customers. It's in the topic, how do we provide services to the home? And that aggregation is really important, so you can get everything in one place, probably get a better bundle deal on that, and somebody that will help and support you when you have issues or problems with that.
But does it have to be an operator to provide that aggregation?
That's a very interesting question. We'll see how things shape up, I guess.
What's the answer, Colin?
Well, I come from an operator, so you can probably guess what my answer would be. We think that's a very effective play for our customer base, certainly. So you can get Netflix, you can get Amazon, you can get all of the PSBs on our platform, of course, the BT Sport content as well. It gives you a one-stop shop, and it works across screens.
I would argue it does have to be an operator. We saw an example yesterday of a broadband operator in Greece who operates or has launched a new service called Win TV. By their own, reckoning, they stated they were a relatively small operator in Greece, fourth in terms of broadband subscribers and addressable market. They've gone from 0 to 40,000 pay TV subscribers because they felt to their strategy of offering, triple and quad band services that they needed TV. And I turn it around as well. We heard about the FANGs earlier. If you were a supplier into a market and you've got competition coming from, or perceived competition coming from Facebook and Google and Apple, etc., what does that say about the profit pool you're working in? It's clearly an attractive market and a healthy market for them to turn their attention to it. But interestingly, the device play and the gateway play and the services play isn't necessarily where they're at. They want the data, and through that, through getting that data, they can reduce their risks when they invest in content. That's why Netflix is so successful with their shows, is because they've got they're getting continuous feedback from what people are viewing, and so I think an operator does need to own that whole home ultimately, because I think they can offer consumers a better aggregated value proposition than one big CE vendor who's got a vested interest in ultimately owning everything. And what they set out to do as well, in turn, will turn. You're starting to see it now. Will turn against some of these provided, kind of solutions where people don't necessarily want to have everything that they're talking about in the house go back to a cloud and be used ultimately to fish for more from them. So.
Just to add,
Ismail, go. And by the way, if any of you have thoughts, comments, wave at me. I don't want to just wait till the end, right? You can chip in at any time.
The wind example you gave in Greece is quite interesting for them. It wasn't only about building a TV subscriber base for them. Their partnership with Android TV has improved their brand perception. So that is why they're growing. Also in Spain, you have tier 2 operators like Euskaltel and Telecable. They launched Android TV 2-3 years ago, and now they're snapping on the heels of the tier 1 operators like Orange over there. So for the relatively smaller operators, Android TV works really well for them.
One comment earlier, though, I would agree that operators are in a prime position to offer a consolidated experience to consumers. The data argument, it's like Facebook and Google and Netflix. They want the data, and that's what they're after. I would argue that's not different for operators. So yes, of course, that's not the primary business. But I mean, let's be realistic. Every major operator has big analytics groups at this point, depending on which region you are, teaming up with credit card companies and so on. So let's not say that's only the business of FANG, right? And I do think actually set-top box platforms for the future for operators have to support that, because the operators need data, they need analytics to improve the experience, right? To have better partnerships, and so honestly, set-top box for the set-top box platforms in the future will have to have that. So it's not only about the form factor or the price, it is also about the software features and the back-end features that it has.
I agree. I'm not sure operators know what to do with the data. Do you know what to do with the data,
Well,
Colin?
there's a number of things we do with it. Of course, we're very sensitive about our customers' privacy.
You check all the GDPR boxes.
We went through all of that
absolutely.
last year, and I have to say, as far as I know, we're fully compliant. But TV that knows you, I think, would be the tagline that I would use. You know, we heard a little bit from Swisscom. There's a really great example in the video of that world of content that they have and how they're using some of that analysis of how customers view their service to present information that's relevant to people and give them their top picks. I think it's some market survey data from the old Ericsson Consumer Lab stuff about the increasing amount of time, something like 20-25% of viewing time, if I recall correctly. Customers just spend fine searching for content, and that's got to be improved. That has to be improved, that experience. How do you improve it? You apply intelligence, you apply machine learning, you apply algorithms to try and present to people what's going to be more attractive to them to watch. They spend less time searching and more time having fun.
Darren, is the stuff that you need to do at your end of things to enable this data flow, this analytics piece to happen?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would agree with Sascha. You know, operators all need data. I just think it's a more colourful world if there's multiple sources of that data and it's been compiled in perhaps in a regional view. But in terms of the set top, I would say the likes of Google and Android TV and also RDK. In the cable industry, have provided a paradigm change in terms of the way we develop software. No longer now is all the differentiation from an operator in the middleware layer of the software. It's actually in that user experience layer. And so, I mentioned in my presentation, as content becomes more of a level playing field, how you present and that data and present that user experience is key for your success. Likewise, gathering the said data and analytics and presenting that back in an informed way, and perhaps in monetizing it to content makers is something that we do provide access through to consumer behaviours in the middleware systems we have today. So I think that's in hand.
So I mean, it's not just about players coming in and potentially taking this aggregator role away from operators. We're also seeing, a little bit of, we talked about retail earlier. We're seeing a little bit of retail devices coming into the operator world. Darren, you mentioned Now TV, which is a device, of course, coming from the retail world, from a Roku kind of device. We've seen some operators starting to use Apple TV.
Yeah.
Pretty expensive device to use, but they're starting to use that. Roku is trying to get deals elsewhere. Do you see that trend increasing, that retail devices become the operator choice?
I think ultimately access to your content, and proliferation of that is key. I think there's been a very guarded release of certain operator applications into certain retail devices. Where Canal Plus, for example, have put on Apple TV, Charter in the US. It's just another vehicle to have their content on, but ultimately for the kind of premium subscription service, they are still providing set tops or gateways or both in those instances. And I think it's just another channel for them to get their content. What is key though is that that they maintain a certain amount of security and content security, and perhaps in the instance of Apple TV, they've convinced the said content owner that that's appropriate. I don't think we're going to see suddenly a raft of CPE devices taking on board pay TV content. The security isn't there in some of those devices. But I do see, I make the argument with many of my operators that, in a world where content, as I mentioned, is accessible from many different devices, you've got to differentiate in that user experience. And, so perhaps things like, small form factor set-top boxes will cater for one segment of the market, or maybe second or third TVs. Premium set-top boxes with perhaps more sophisticated home management devices, etc., attached. And then things like audio, enhanced audio solutions, they all provide a level of differentiation from just taking video and putting it on a standard TV.
Sascha, view on the retail device piece?
I think it's still relatively niche, and I honestly think the announcements we have seen so far, at least from bigger operators, were more for the marketing effect and as a bridge rather than a final strategy. I do think, though, there is, and I mentioned that in my talk briefly, the margins for, not everywhere, but in a lot of regions, the margins for the pay TV operators are going down. So content prices have gone up in the last few years. Now with increased competition, they had to react. Pay TV operators are in the process of reacting to that, also from a pricing perspective. Complexity has gone up, like developing complex architectures, devices, middlewares, and so on, is also not cheap. So there is the very tempting approach also to actually give up some of that control and just save the money, right? Save the CapEx and the OpEx, and that's a question mark, and have that through a retail device, right? I think OpEx is a bigger question. If you have the customer on a call for 5 times or so because he can't get his retail device to work with your service, that's then not really a net saving. But I do think we will see in the coming years more approaches to actually get to shift off for some of the customer segments the cost of retail devices, yes.
Ismail, I've seen some pretty interesting surveys from you guys in the past asking operators about their attitudes to different solutions, and in those surveys it seemed that there was a considerable momentum behind Android, and particularly operator tiers of Android and so on.
Yeah.
Is that still the pattern you're seeing now?
So I'm coming to this conference on the back of writing an extensive Android TV report, and what I saw was that in 2018 there were more Android TV launches. There were 19 Android TV launches just by traditional broadcasters, not even streamers. So there were more Android TV launches last year in 2018 compared to 2017 and 2016 combined. And what I'm expecting is that this trend will continue. I mean, at the time I finished the report, there weren't any launches in the Middle East and Latin America, but by the time it was published to our clients, Ooredoo in Qatar launched their Android TV box, the first in the Arab Middle Eastern region. So in that sense, the report is already outdated. So the developments in this space are quite fast-paced. Yeah.
So is it game over? Has Android won this battle?
Well, put it this way, I can't see where the competition is coming from. So Apple has a few partnerships with certain operators. Amazon is trying to get into the ecosystem, but not necessarily the set-top box ecosystem. So they have Alexa on set-top boxes or Alexa controlling set-top boxes.
RDK?
RDK, I believe RDK and Android TV, they appeal to operators of different types. So Android TV is more appealing to operators of tier 2 and also in maturing markets, whereas RDK is the premium top-level tier 1 operators. So there's going to be a level of competition between the two for the foreseeable future.
Darren, has Android won this?
No, I think, as I said, I think it was an innovative paradigm change. The idea that you could provide an open source software stack with, the ability for application developers to develop against, and that same app work in the Middle East as it does in Europe on an Android TV set-top box solution. That's quite compelling. It reduces cost of development and improves speed of innovation. But equally, as I said, it'd be a very black and white world if there was only one winner. I think RDK, we're starting to see, 40, 50 million devices now out there, both cable with Vodafone gateways, then you've got LGI in Europe, you've got Comcast and obviously now Sky. So that is one big sizable pay TV market on RDK, and then coupled with that, several other middlewares in there that, are still going and still evolving. So, I think Android TV just improves the innovation and the competition. And to the point made, it does suit certain markets. We saw Wind TV be very successful with it, and I'm no doubt we'll see other regions and markets and operators be successful. But equally, there are other competing solutions out there which are just as compelling. And RDK, for example, they've listened to the market. They've accepted that, they need to provide a more off-the-shelf type solution. And so the Lab Accelerator and RDK 3.0 is providing an apps framework. So you can, an operator can take RDK and, effectively have pre-integrated things like Netflix and everything else. So.
Sascha, you kind of voted with your feet, left Google.
I don't think Android TV has won that game. I think first it would also be bad for the market if that would be the case. Second, as being pointed out, like specifically on the tier 1 operator scale, there isn't really anyone yet deployed in Android TV. I do think though what Android does well and has done in mobile and is doing on TV is actually sharing the economics and the innovation, right? Like my big problem with where I'm not seeing that with RDK is like Liberty Global doesn't really benefit from massively from the developments in Vodafone, right? Or Comcast doesn't really massively, Comcast is a special case here anyway, benefit from the developments at LGI. So I think, and that's why maybe Android is also more has been relatively quickly picked up by tier 2, tier 3s who do not have the financial means to build all this on their own, and so benefiting from the developments of other and from the cost savings that Android gets from the mobile background where the volumes are entirely different. I think so far RDK has not replicated that, and it will be interesting to see if the focus on tier 1s where you don't have that many worldwide, if that's enough. I personally would like to see a third player.
Okay, come on, you guys, questions, comments.
Sorry, just to clarify, when I said Android TV is one, I was talking in relation to the other FANG players, not the entire set-top box industry. So obviously RDK has its own, obviously far greater in terms of market share than Android TV.
Ben, one sec, just coming.
Yeah, just to go back to the title, hardware in the home. I'm surprised nobody really talked much about the gateway. I mean, you mentioned it just at the end in a sentence, but that's where the operator service arrived originally. And what with Google has various propositions in the home. Alexa on various is being integrated into some gateways. So I don't know if part of that battle may be happening actually rather on the gateway, not just the set-top box. I mean, we're talking about the set-top box dying.
What do you mean by gateway as distinct from set-top box? Because
as in most operators,
kind of come together,
there's two different
right?
devices. The device that you plug into the phone. You used to plug into the phone jack. Now you plug into your Ethernet, or depending how you're connected. The home gateway.
The router.
The router. So that's my
comment.
Yeah, I think just.
Because you were talking about the importance of
Well, I did talk about whole home
Wi-Fi.
I'd absolutely agree with your point. If you look at what's hardware in people's homes at the moment, typically they've got a set-top box underneath their TV. Typically they've got a home router. They're starting to have whole home Wi-Fi, as I was saying. So as you move from consumption on a single screen to multiple screen and fluid viewing between the two, what do you do about that? And you're absolutely right. I think you can start to do more on the home gateway. We're seeing technological change as well. So what was a relatively low power device has now got 15K, 20K DMIP. There's a lot of processing power there. You've got the connectivity around the home. That means you can start to shift what happens where. And I think that's definitely an area to keep an eye on. I think we'll see a lot of interesting developments there.
Yeah, and I'd echo that. I mean, I think ultimately, if you look in the market, the more successful operators have both gateways and set-tops in many ways. And that edge of network device, whether it be a gateway or a set-top, is critical at the moment for their services in the home. To the point made, absolutely Wi-Fi and the smarts around Wi-Fi, the management of things like multi-access point, beam steering, etc., are all managed within the gateway. And so we are seeing product mixes change slightly, and more sophistication going to the gateway. Perhaps for a point in time when actually TV is just delivered purely over IP, you're starting to see that shift. But for ourselves, we provide both gateways and set-tops. We benefit from those, understanding the technologies in both, and you do see some operators want to put more in the gateway, some keep it quite thin, some more in the set-top still. But I'd say, yeah, absolutely, the gateway is fundamental to the growth of the pay TV industry.
So there's one more point, if I may, just on that topic. So you have to think about who's taking broadband and who's taking TV. And typically the TV is a subset, the customers take the broadband.
Yeah.
So you have to be conscious about what cost you put in the gateway as opposed to the TV solution.
Please.
Hi, thanks. It's Simon Keelan again. Hard drives. Do the set-top boxes of the future have a hard drive? And are there content rights in the way of that bright golden network PVR future?
So we heard from Tele2 earlier talking about the top thing their customers missed was having a DVR or a hard drive within it. So
yeah, I mean, the answer to that is we still, our product mix is still a significant amount of the boxes we ship have hard drives in them. Some of that is a content rights issue. We have one operator, pan-European, who their box in the UK has to have a hard drive in it. We have operators in Africa who don't have significant broadband penetration who still want a hard drive in it. We've got operators, elsewhere who don't necessarily have a broadband ownership as well, and they still want a hard drive. And then you saw, very exciting, innovative Android solution in Sweden, and yet the chief thing that the consumer's missing is hard drive. So I think you can only take the consumer one step at a time, and I think for sure, there will be market segments where hard drive is, there's less reliance on it, but for some time we're still shipping them.
I think from a licensing perspective, from a content licensing perspective, that limitation is on the way out. Mm-hmm. Regulation is a different story, and that is lagging behind. I think there are still in too many countries actually like broadcast or actually like linear TV regulations that are not always imposed by the content owners themselves that prevent some of those things. I do think we will see hard drives longer in areas with infrastructure deficiencies, so bandwidth deficiencies and so on. I do think in other countries the licensing and also eventually the regulatory limitations, if we look the next 5 years, will be on the way out. Also because I think the broadcasters, for example, who have been backing a lot of the regulatory requirements in this field, have an own interest at this point to remove these limitations.
Colin?
I think there's actually two questions in there. So the first one was about where can you make a recording. So as we've just been discussing, so the move to the cloud tends to be on a country-by-country basis, following the legal framework in that particular country. In the UK, we're still very much on-premise in the customer's home. The second question is it a hard drive? So the rise of flash technology over the last few years has been really, really interesting to see. We're now producing 96-layer flash devices in the fabs. We're starting to see very considerable overlap between the capacity and price point between a traditional hard drive and flash drive. And look forward another year, 2 year, 3 year, I think we're going to see quite a shift away from a traditional hard drive towards a flash device. When it's flash and doesn't require quite the infrastructure you require for a hard drive to support it, you can maybe start to see that might move to a different location in the home. When you've got whole home connectivity and an easy to access device, does that plug into the home gateway? Back to the gentleman's question. Then you record stuff that meets your content right requirements, legal requirements, but can make it available on any device in the home. So I think we'll start to see technology change, moving things around a bit inside the home.
Very impressive answering two questions in one there.
On that impressive note, I think we'll say it's lunchtime. Please join me in thanking a great panel.